Hello and welcome to ClausenWorld. Thank you for joining me today. In today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about my experience with container gardening versus raised bed gardening. Now, when I first started seriously gardening about 7 or so years ago, I started out with a very small amount of container garden, and then I began to build my raised bed garden. What I did was use materials that I had already available to me, which was free to create that container, and then I actually purchased soil medium. At the time, I didn't know anything about hugelkultur, organic matter. I didn't know the technical names, but I did the best I could with what I had. I've got some notes down here, so if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my notes. I want to make sure I don't miss anything important. When I had that container garden, I absolutely loved it. But as I began to grow in my gardening needs, I decided that perhaps a raised bed garden might not be the best choice for me. Raised bed gardens, you're limited in the mobility of your garden because it's in one place. You may have to think about the type of lighting, make sure that the sun is in the right area, that it moves over your plants correctly. If you have weather that might turn poor, you have to think about covering your raised bed. If your soil is not that great, you'll have to amend it. That may affect your yields. There can be a varying cost when it comes to creating a raised bed, as well as space may be a factor. Space was not a factor for me. That's why I have both raised bed as well as container gardening. Here is a photo of my very first raised garden. Now, container gardening. I really enjoy container gardening because of the mobility, the flexibility. You can have around about the same, if not more, of a yield with a container garden, depending on what you put in that container, because that plant that you are growing, everything about that plant, it looks to you for everything: food, water, shade, sun, everything. So that plant could be the best it can be because you're able to give it a little bit more than what you may or may not be able to give it when it comes to a raised bed. I love to be able to create a raised bed mimicked in a container. And what I mean by that is I take my container, no matter what it is. Your containers could be a shoe, a boot, it could be a bucket, it could be a pot, a tub, a trough. There's so many different variations of what a container garden looks like. But what you do is you create that raised bed environment inside of your containers. And that's one of the reasons why I truly love container gardening, because I can have the benefits of a raised bed, but the mobility of a container. Here is a few photos of my container garden from the time I made my very first raised garden until now. So that's me and what I like about having a container garden versus a raised bed garden. What do you guys like when it comes to your growing? I myself am going to always have raised bed, container, and some in-ground gardening. How about you? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody.